When roads run short, the challenges of living in a car-centric Central Florida. You're listening to The Wrap from Central Florida Public Media. I'm Brendan Byrne. In Central Florida, driving is how most people usually get around, and it's expensive. But there's another cost, the cost of time. In quickly growing areas like the Four Corners, Lake County residents say they're feeling that cost as they wait on a roadway connection to Orange County, which homebuilders and developers started promising more than a decade ago. Kyle Glanton says he spends 10 to 11 hours of his week commuting.
People, they need access to things, and if that road's not done, you're holding up a lot of people's lives at this point.
On the Lake County side, construction is almost done, but Orange County has yet to break ground on its portion of the roadway connection and can't do so until more than a dozen area property owners sign off on proposed changes to their agreement with the county. Our series, Seen and Heard, Costly Commute, dives into the issues of transportation here in our region. That's ahead on The Wrap. The big stories this week from Central Florida Public Media. But first, these news headlines. White House National Security Advisor and former Florida Congressional Representative Mike Waltz is now President Trump's nominee to serve as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will now serve simultaneously as acting National Security Advisor while maintaining his role at the State Department. The move comes weeks after it was revealed Waltz added a journalist to a signal chat being used to discuss military plans. The development marks the first major staff shakeup of President Donald Trump's second term. Waltz came under scrutiny in March after revelations he added the Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg to a private text chain on the encrypted messaging app Signal, which was used to discuss planning for March 15th military operation. Waltz served in the House representing Florida for 3 terms before his elevation to the White House. The district covers Flagler, Marion, Volusia, and parts of Lake County, along with Putnam and St. John's. In a special election last month, former state senator Randy Fine won Waltz's vacant seat. Federal and state law enforcement officials on Thursday announced the results of a statewide operation to arrest and round up people in the country illegally. But the same day, a group of Central Florida activists rallied to protest the use of the Orange County Jail to detain some of those arrested. As Central Florida Public Media's Rick Brunson reports, Operation Tidal Wave is bringing swells of praise and protest.
Surrounded by the governor and other state leaders, Madison Sheehan, the deputy director of the Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, also known as ICE, applauded the results of last week's roundup.
And together we are able to conduct over 1,100 arrests and remove several violent gang members from the communities here in Florida. Operation Tidal Wave is truly a first-of-its-kind operation, utilizing 287G resources, integrating with the state and local law enforcement to assist in the day-to-day ICE mission.
Of those arrested, 2/3 had criminal records. Of the 250 Florida law enforcement officers who participated in the operation, some were from the local sheriff's offices of Orange, Brevard, Sumter, and Volusia counties. With some arrestees ending up being detained in the Orange County Jail, local activists gathered there to protest the use of county tax dollars for deportations. One of the organizers of the rally was Erica Gomez Tejeda of the Central Florida Labor Council Latin American Affairs.
So we don't think our tax dollars should be funding some deportation machine. We think our tax dollars should be coming back to our communities because we are facing the tariffs, the inflations, job losses, job protections. So we need to reprioritize and definitely fight against this ICE collaboration.
Orange County jail records show a huge spike in the number of inmates being held for ICE detention. Through April of this year, there were 1,018 inmates being held on ICE detainers. That's slightly more than the number of inmates with ICE detainers for all of 2024. Rick Brunson, Central Florida Public Media.
2 sensitive watersheds in Orange County could be getting extra protections. As Central Florida Public Media's environment reporter Molly Durig explains, about 30 people came to discuss that possibility at a meeting organized by the county this week.
The Shingle Creek and St. Johns River watersheds could become designated special protection areas, or SPAs, which Orange County says are meant to support biodiversity without restricting development. The 2 environmentally sensitive areas are quite different. While the St. Johns River watershed is largely undeveloped, the opposite is true for Shingle Creek. Any new SPAs would need to be approved by the Board of County Commissioners. Before that, the county says it plans to hold 2 separate community meetings about each watershed later this month.
Central Florida Public Media's Molly Durig reporting. These stories and more on our website. Visit cfpublic.org. This is the last weekend to play some Cloak and Dagger, the Orlando Science Center's exhibit called Top Secret, License to Spy.
So if you like escape rooms, if you like spy movies, if you like puzzles, Top Secret is something that you will really enjoy.
Uncover that story yourself, Gumshoe. That's this week on Spotlight. Get it wherever you get this podcast. This week, we published our annual series, Central Florida Seen and Heard, this time with a focus on transportation. Driving is how most people get around here, and it's expensive. Last year, the Florida Turnpike says toll transactions brought in $1.3 billion. But there's another cost: time. In quickly growing areas like the Four Corners, residents say daily detours are making their commutes more costly. Central Florida Public Media's Molly Durig reports.
No, this isn't a reenactment of Pink Floyd's classic 1982 film The Wall. It's a protest made up of some 200 people living near the Lake Orange County line. And that wall? It's really a cluster of cement barriers blocking cars from driving onto a rural road historically used by citrus farmers.
Open the road!
These protesters live in a community of sprawling planned developments near the Four Corners, one of the fastest growing parts of Florida, where Lake, Orange, Osceola, and Polk counties all come together. Many residents say they moved here because of the proximity to Orlando and the promise of a new roadway network to connect Orange and Lake counties.
Stop the lies, build the connector.
Some say it's a promise that dates back to 2013, but years later, that roadway connection between Flemings Road and Sawgrass Bay Boulevard is still underway. Viridiana Glanton and her family moved here in 2023.
Biggest reason we purchased because of the connector.
Fed up with their bogged-down commute and decade-old promises of a new road, some residents decided to take matters into their own hands, using the unfinished roadway connection as a makeshift shortcut.
Everybody was starting to take the shortcut because it is a paved road on the other side. There's just a dirt, little tiny piece between our pavement and their pavement.
The makeshift shortcut was really only an option for people with bigger vehicles that could handle a little rough terrain. That is, before barricades went up, blocking off the unfinished connection. Before that, the shortcut, nicknamed the Disney Cut-Through, had become a lifeline for residents with four-wheel drive, including Viridiana's husband, Kyle Glanton.
We're using that, and I mean, like, you talking about saving 25, 30 minutes just to get to downtown Orlando was amazing.
To get a sense of what Glanton's daily commute is like these days, without the inter-county connection, I met up with him on a Monday morning, long before the crack of dawn. 4:45 a.m., to be exact.
The traffic buildup gets so insane here.
According to the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council, the average commute time for drivers in the Four Corners is 30.5 minutes each way. Census data show, on average, Florida drivers spend slightly more time commuting to and from work than in other states. Glanton says he switched to this very early morning work schedule to try and avoid some of the traffic. Even still, it takes him about an hour to get to where he works in East Orlando, about twice as long as Glanton says it would take with the pending roadway connection.
A lot of my teammates, they want to see us go ahead and allow the road to be used in its current state.
At least to local traffic, until the road can fully open in its finished form. But Orange County's Transportation Planning Division Manager Brian Sanders has concerns.
That's problematic. More vehicles are coming on to our road than structurally it can handle.
Right now, a geotechnical consultant contracted by Orange County is analyzing how structurally stable Flemings Road is in its current form to see whether it could be safely reopened to local traffic. But in the meantime, without the connection in place, residents have other safety concerns.
Okay, what if there's like an emergency? There's going to be a bottleneck. And surprise, surprise, we ran into an emergency.
That's Lake County resident Esterling Lantigua, who says last fall, his 4-year-old daughter fell into the pool and nearly drowned. Fortunately, a relative knew CPR. But without the roadway connection, Lantigua says it took longer for emergency responders to arrive.
7 to 8 minutes until EMT arrived. And they even said it, they could have been here quicker.
But as things stand right now, without the connector road, some neighborhoods in the Lantigua's larger development community have only one direct exit route.
As far as access, if you look at it, the further back in you go, the less options you have to get out.
That's Lake County Public Works Engineering Director Jeff Earhart, who says local governments also want to see road projects get done, but there's a big challenge.
As a steward of everybody's tax money, that's their money. And with the cost of roads going up so much.
According to the Federal Highway Administration, road construction costs rose to record-breaking heights in recent years. likely peaking in 2022 and remaining well above the general inflation rate reflected by the Consumer Price Index.
I bid a project that came in at $2.5 million back in the early 2000s, and now it's up to $8 million. The numbers are just hard to believe. When I used to talk in hundreds of thousands, and now I'm talking in millions.
That's where the role of developers comes into play, not only for this transportation project, but for hundreds of others in various stages across Central Florida. In many of those cases, developers fund road projects with transportation impact fees meant to help offset the costs of growth, like more traffic as more people move to the area. Here's Terry Scott, Lake County's Public Works Construction Manager.
The need for the road isn't really there until the developer wants to develop the adjacent land and the land around it. So the developer drives that need.
Often, developers also help drive the pace of road construction. In Orange County, developers can have projects approved in phases, paying impact fees as they go. That leaves the county waiting for enough dollars to accumulate to start construction. And that leaves residents waiting on a would-be road. Here's Sanders with Orange County again.
The development community plays a unique role. They're able to finance these projects well ahead of Orange County's collections of impact fees. They come up front and provide a service that accelerates these roadways.
That's after a road network agreement is approved, which in this case has been an especially long process, complicated by the more than a dozen property owner parties to the agreement still being negotiated with Orange County. All entities, some of which have sold off property since signing the initial agreement, must now sign off on proposed changes before road construction can begin.
It's kind of this mixed thing of charging new development to help.
That's Adam Carr, an urban planner with Urban 3. He says most local governments face this funding conundrum with infrastructure like roads. But it gets uniquely challenging in Florida with no income tax and strict property tax limits.
There is this constraint on revenue growth for communities, while costs associated with maintenance and operations of infrastructure systems don't necessarily have that constraint.
Especially given the rising cost of building roads, transportation impact fees paid by developers are critical for making road projects happen at all, including the connector road Glanton and his neighbors are waiting on now. Lake County is just about done with its section, but with Orange County still yet to start construction, Glanton's feeling apprehensive. Until the road is up and running, Glanton will be in for more of what he says is about 10 or 11 hours a week spent commuting. Originally, Glanton says he and his wife figured they'd want more children, but now they're leaning against it. And Glanton's lengthy early morning commute is a big reason why.
I just don't see how we could do it.
The biggest downside of Glanton's early morning commute, he barely ever gets to see his 4-year-old daughter, Kennedy. Except for right now, for their daily video call shortly after he gets to work. Glanton knows how precious and fleeting these moments are. He's hoping the road will be done soon so he can enjoy more of them.
I'll see you when I get home.
Molly Durig, Central Florida Public Media.
You can check out the rest of the stories in our series, Central Florida Seen and Heard Costly Commute, on our website. Visit cfpublic.org. That's it for the wrap this week. This podcast is produced by Central Florida Public Media with assistance from News Director Latoya Dennis and Digital Director Ryan Ellison. I'm Brendan Byrne. This is The Wrap.